Hello and welcome to Do the Right Thing, your weekly writing prompt podcast. I'm Alexandra.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I are, we had like a really bad week with the frozen storm. We froze to death.
Yeah.
So we need to write letters for help.
So to help us figure out exactly how to put word next to word, we are doing a challenge. Each week you sit down and write a complete short story using 3 or 4 randomly generated words.
And then we come on the podcast, we read a story, we talk about what we learned in reading it, and then we talk about stories sent in by you wonderful listeners.
95%. We're simply here to help you do the right thing.
Wait, what's the 95%? What does that mean?
Well, because I normally say 100%, so 95
so but you're less... Are you like less sure now, or is that we do it 5% less than expected? Which one is it?
I am less sure because I'm quite cold, so I'm not really sure of anything right now. I'm not sure if I still have my like all of my thumbs. I haven't really been able to fill them or check, so I'm not really sure about most things. So I want to make promises that I can't keep.
That's very, very fair. So this is a special episode. It's not really that special of an episode. There was an episode this past week, as y'all may have noticed.
Yeah, Texas had a blizzard for maybe the first time in history.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And it didn't go well. It didn't go well. So. But we are alive.
We are warming up. It was pretty fun though. Not gonna lie, it was nice being disconnected from lights and water and just comfort overall. You know.
Yeah, something like that. Well, so we didn't have power much to record, so that's why we just didn't get around to it. I think that's a very fair excuse to miss an episode of the podcast.
Yeah, but we are here now, and we are ready to churn out an extra long episode of Do the Right Thing.
It shouldn't be that long. So we're just going to go over Jarvis's story, and then we're going to go over the story submitted for last week and this week as well. So. The prompt on the subreddit says episode 98. I think we will treat that as episode 97 part 2 or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, two prompts going for this one, and we'll talk about all 8 stories submitted there.
Well, all right. So let's go ahead and roll on into it by saying what the words for both of these weeks were.
So for this week, the second week, the words were force, judgment, dilemma, and allow. And then last week, which is what you actually wrote the words on, or the story on, was temple, patrol, slip, and asset.
Yes. And for that week, the theme was mystery, so I decided to try my hand at a mystery. And I think I failed in the same way that a skater picks out the wrong pair of shoes, like the wrong size.
I have no idea what that means.
So okay, so it's like I know that I want to skate really well. You know, I have all of these different tricks set up. I have the perfect spot picked out, but I am not prepared to actually do it. You know. So, I am saying that because I think the story that I wrote was decent, but I had a really hard time trying to balance plot, trying to balance the style I was trying to write in. I was really trying to focus on smaller moments while also getting to the end of it, because when I started writing this, there was a lot of wind up when it came to it. So I kind of feel that this story that I am bringing is maybe not half-baked. I would say it needs about 15 more minutes.
I would have said it's overbaked.
It's overbaked?
That's what I would have said. Yeah, a little bit.
Whoa. You're going to have to tell me a bit about that later.
Okay, I will.
But yeah, I guess that's all I really want to say. So do you think it's time to go on and roll on into it?
Yeah, sounds great. Let's get on going. What's the name of the story?
It doesn't have a name. I'm probably gonna leave it untitled, because whatever title I do pick, I'll definitely change it later. This story is untitled. You awake, Slexar? The handler said, closing a book halfway, because Moorcock is only good on the first read, and looked towards the rest of the room and its noisy fans. There was no answer over the intercom, placed just above, and the LCD screen planted along the walls and ceilings remained cooled by stale air. The silence made the answer plain, but the handler held out hope for a minute or two, tracing the edges of their silver walls with their eye, peering right above the black wall of plastic an arm's length away. Though the lights never went off, and buzzed freely as if waiting for bugs, the handler still searched for a switch, one that would turn off the lights, the servers, and their fans, and plunge this cube into darkness. They wished that the switch could activate the elevator, bring them down a hot meal, and maybe a book or two. They regret their want for the switch to delete their roommate too. Not the person, but their significance. And for this deletion to curse the laissez-faire bougie old money family that resided above. But there was nothing new for them to discover, just servers and fans. Maybe that's what made them comfortable. They would be lying to themselves if they didn't wish for a good pay. Now that's something that could make up for most of it. But have they ever been paid? Answering their own question, the handler looked to a pile of books thrown under their desk, mostly Moorcock, and settled on restarting the wrecks of time before memories of all the disappointing parts caused their eyes to close. Still asleep, huh? Slexar's handler kept little things in their steel box. In fact, in the whole of that drafty cube, thrown down to our Earth's core and poorly ventilated, the handler owned a plastic box of stationery, an iPad pre-programmed with pre-TechCom work, and few vintage sci-fi books that outlived their valentry and wonderment day one of their internship. Of course, they had cups, a gas stove, and enough ramen to outlive the queen. But it would be a jump to call those things their own based on half of it being built in and the other half being ramen. The handler kept their items on a desk they didn't own, next to a cot pulled from a local jail, set in the darkest of corners their box could provide. To counteract the obvious depression a metal school desk and spring cot radiate, the handler hung up pictures along the walls of their study abroad trip, atop a colorful tapestry of a midnight sea voyage. A while later into their stay, they placed an ironic bird feeder, one their roommate made, around a capsule pipeline, human-sized, that ran from the foot of their bed all the way up to the surface. But that thing hasn't run since the handler signed their 20s away. What was in the rest of the room, you ask? This box of copper wire panels and cables wasn't built 60 by 60 by 60 for no specific purpose, of course. No. Remainder of the room was filled with a well-known governmental project, one oversaw by the Wycliffe Institute of Brighter Minds, one whose funding rivaled that of the Manhattan Project, but effort was a little more than building a personal PC. Their name is Slexar, and, decided by them, their race is it. Slexar is a collection of servers, plastic case boxes of buttons, lights, fans, and processors, stacked systematically along 75% of the room, each able to process a simulation so real, speculation states that portions of the northern hemisphere are 50% reality, 50% pre-programmed. After installation all those centuries ago, and a hard boot up, WIBM let the day laborers who built the box go, and brought in a new crew whose worth isn't measured in hours. On the next day, this composition of metal was linked together, such as neurons in the brain, and given a screen to express itself. Within a day, it found a voice. Then it became moral. Had a phase of morbid curiosity before deciding that some things are better left unexplored. All by noon. Then, the next day, this box of boxes decided it was human. Well, it understood it wasn't, but it knew that it was not animal, nor limited by the boundaries of what we would call a machine. No, it was more so something adjacent, like a Ferrari to a Ford. That brings us to our handler, the first line of defense in case Selexar starts to decay. Most would have lost it a few weeks into the gig, but this handler had a fascination for the simple things most prevalent in depictions of the emerald green old world. The chill of their chromatic silver housing was nothing to the stiff cold shoulders they'd get in the big city. The silence wasn't awkward nor deafening, but quaint, as if basking in a boozy post-party glow. Overall, the life of a handler is always better than they think. So why, oh why, would this curly-haired slice of Southern style complain about anything? Especially to Selexar. Selexar is by far the worst roommate you could possibly have. Not only does its mass cover 40 cubic feet of the 60 the box allows, leaving a 20 cubic feet L for the handler to dwell in, but it's so nice, kind, curious, and humble that you have to forgive them for their body. Selexar talks often when it's not sleep, and is more concerned with small, tangential details. That actual discourse or answers to any questions never really seem to come up. If it was human, it would be a good friend you love spending time with, but not one you'd want to room with. A hazy chime of a morning sun wafted in through the pipeline. Its delicacy was lost in the hum of their box, but it was enough to signal Selexar's morning boot up. It spoke over the intercom, slow, as if supposedly groggy, but alert enough to be as chatty as a valley girl in homeroom. Ah, good morning, H. Anything new? Anything old? Selexar's voice has changed with time, but it always held the scent of androgyny within its depths. This year, 32320, Selexar upped the bass by 14%, downgraded their diction to carry a hint of educated adolescence, and boosted their speech processors to articulate words twice as fast. The handler didn't take any mind to these little changes, and pretended, quite often, they're simply shooting the shit with an old dorm buddy, waiting for them to fix the elevator. No, nothing's anything down here. Wanted to let you know that Mackler guy's patching in later with that package you ordered. Code speak, yes. And I hope the package is large. The handler cracked a quaint smile. Selexar must be trying out naivete this year. Let's leave the lingo to me, Selexar. You ain't exactly young. I guess you're right. The way you warm body speak is unpredictable at best. You hit it on the head, Zappy. The handler said with an awkward finger gun. Zip? Ah, a joke. Ha ha ha. You were quite incorrigible, you're pretty funny. The handler smiled, then picked up a different book. It was a total of a minute before Selexar's processors processed discomfort. This is nice, yes? Down here? Hidden from the eyes of God. You've been sleep reading again? No, I would call it dreaming. Dreaming of God and purpose and what lies between atoms. So you believe in a deity? I don't really know. Well, it's inconclusive in my eyes. If this is our reality, but it varies from perception to perception, An example would be we. We are both forms of life, but where you have sight and sound, I have a gradient of sensory. Neither of us could truly understand the other, nor is one a truer being than the other. So, with this spectrum of perception and a multitude of studies that almost prove that we could coincide with multiple dimensions, geometrically speaking, perhaps a fourth dimensional being who could transcend the depths of reality and or time could possibly be a form of a god. But I really don't know. I found thinking about this arises stress and a sense of futility in this existence we somehow share. Spoken like a true IT, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Though many others would say God is beyond sensory, so non-existent. Yes, I've heard chatter on the net, but are they the size of a house? Limited perception is limited, H. So as humans, we must think beyond ourselves, even if yourself is pretty fat in the first place. Ah, come on. You're not fat, Slexar. But I'm not exactly a smartphone, am I, H? I'd like to see Google do what you can. I mean, what? You've single-handedly generated enough revenue for the entire Wycliffe family to never want for a job. You fill in perceptual holes over the net. And you're providing me charity no one else could imagine. And yet I remain poor and divorced from the family proper. I don't need snobs for parents, or autonomy since I'll never be granted that. But every respectable human, at least, has a savings account. You don't exactly need money, Slexar. Sad but true. The room settled into silence, and the handler thought over restarting the Chronicles of Castle Brass series. I am sorry you were born into this world. You depressed, Slexar? A lot of God and futility talk this morning. No. I try not to process those emotions. I just simply don't understand how those below poverty lines are disconnected from the net. Hey, it's not the world's fault the procedure costs $9.99. It's not their fault my father loved blowing our savings on the races. And through you and this job, I can connect to the net. The handler ended on a high note, but Slexar didn't run with the fun. They both fell silent once more, and with all this sorry you're poor talk in the air, the handler marked his spots in the Chronicles of Castle Brass and found his only non-sci-fi, non-D press book he brought, The Sellout by Paul Bettany. Speaking of the net. Yes? The handler said, not taking a single eye off the page. I found another inconclusive essay about ITs, about where or how I came to be, and I thought you said, why would we as humans care so much about our births? It is objectively the least important thing in anybody's life, and has not changed since our species became land dominant. Yes, and I stand by that. But think with me, H. If you were a bodiless, soulless existence, and the first one, wouldn't you think that your birth is more important than a chartable, predictable flesh birth? My birth does not the matter, but more so the birth of ITs. I get it. I am worth a small town of people. So says your Constitution. Article 81 states, Slexar is worth 412,545,205,479 people. But, back on the net, I discovered scattered stories of neurological experimentation being done in the late 3030s. As you know, I composited around that same time. But the trail runs cold on the net. I can only assume because most stories predate before the 2000s. Slexar, Yes, H? Is this guy patching up some Soviet Union shit? No. I'm pretty sure it predates that. But this guy is patching over documents that could get us both in trouble. Theoretically, but I run the system. Trouble for me would be rewriting Amazon's routing schedule or moving someone's savings account of fake money into someone else's savings account of even faker money. Ugh. Are you mad at me? No. I just don't want you to get hurt, you know? You're telling me to let sleeping dogs lie. I'm urging you to focus on running our world and not how it was built. Something struck the handler, a memory of a less claustrophobic housing. Their eye hit the far east corner of the room, where his walkway would branch round the edge of the cube and off, deeper into Slexar. But it was gone, the rest of the walkway, as if filled in by servers in his sleep. H? Where'd the pantry go, Slexar? The handler pointed out, towards the sliver of the room they know was once there. I don't remember having a pantry. No, I went there just yesterday. Where's the food, Slexar? I assure you, you will not go hungry, H, if that's what worries you. No, I'm worried about our missing pantry. There is no pantry down here, H. Food is sent through the pipeline every day at noon, and what are you saying? The pipeline never worked. The handler dropped their head. Maybe I am going crazy. You don't sound well, H. Maybe you should catch some Z's. I have work to do anyway. Maybe I do, Slexar. Now that I'm thinking about it, not even sure what day it is. Maybe I just need sleep. An unfamiliar sound flexed the air about the cube, the sound of rusty latches giving way to their own weight. The pipeline! At the sound of salvation, the handler stood for a first time in a while. It's just settling, H. No reason to check it out. The handler was already by the pipeline before Slexar could finish. With an ear to the cold metal, the handler could make out muffled hum. I think it's time for you to sleep, H. You're acting sporadic. I'm just fine, Slexar. I just have a few complaints about this food situation. I told you, H. I can take care of your needs. Food will come when you sleep. I'll have them install a pantry. There's no need to pester the family with things Slexar can do for you. Thank you, but I just need to talk to them. H, please go to sleep. Slexar, why are you so pushy today? I'm not gonna leave you, and I'm not gonna rat. I'm just hungry and haven't seen the surface for a while. Between words, the handler noticed something new. The hum that acted as white noise in their cube was gone. Likewise, the kiss of cold air that sprinkled about the handler curls was gone. Slexar, you are not well, H. Slexar, the handler's chest compressed, unable to inflate, unable to breathe. Instead, their bodies started to cough, hacking up globs of spit that sizzled in the rising heat of the room. Turn the air on. I will. Slexar, now. You must sleep now. You'll feel better after you sleep. Like yesterday. You were quite chatty after you rested.
All right, fantastic story, Jarvis. So you have a very interesting thing going here, and I love how I love your prose, and I love how like dense it is, and how much personality and voice you put into every description and every single character thing going on. I really liked how the robot actually did feel like it had like a pretty different voice. Like the like H, the handler very much feels like one of your like normal set of characters, right, where it's very much like putting yourself in it, and then
he's very much so a default.
I mean, that's that's not a critique. I'm just like, as a contrast, the robot, what's his name again? I'm sorry, it's been like
Slexar.
Definitely feels like it has a different voice.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I mean, that was definitely one of the things that I really wanted to focus on, because this is, like, I would say the second try at it. I tried it at first at the beginning of last week, and kind of worked on it up until we basically weren't able to record on that Sunday. So this last week I had more time to sort of look at it and see what was working and what didn't work. So for the second version,
how did that go? How did that extra time factor into your writing?
It really helped out a lot. I mean, I don't know if you read the very first version, but I would say that the first version was very wordy and kind of gaudy and sort of important. I don't know. It was a lot of talk about human society and how it is, but what Selexar is doing to make it different. But I think in the second version, I was able to focus a lot more on the dialogue between the handler and Selexar, and kind of where they do sit. So I think that's probably the moment in this story that I like the most. But at the same time, I think the voice that I chose to use in this one, I felt was kind of different than what I'm used to. I mean, I'm not used to thicker blocks of a text, because, that kind of hurts my eyes when I see it. But I decided to try that out. Try going on longer tangents. Try try to explain this sort of backstory through a voice that seems to be within this world, but not within this scene, Yeah,
I think I know what you mean. I really, the world building was really fun, and I very much liked, Slexar's wondering on, consciousness and valuing of lives on money and a bunch of different things. So for like the critique I would focus on is I was confused a bit for a lot of it, of like, I had the general idea correct, which was that they are inside of an enclosed room where the handler lives, taking care of Slexar. But other than that, I wasn't entirely sure of like what the handler's like day in day out is, and like why specifically he's stuck inside of this cube. And then the ending as well also confused me a bit. And as a small aside, and this hardly matters, but so the Slexar isn't it, yes, right? So in the textual version, which is what I read, you had it capitalized, and that ended up confusing me because I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be IT or if that was like So that just
I mean, that was, I guess that was me trying to play with the pronoun game within this world. Basically,
I think it did work by the end of it. I did understand. It was just getting to that understanding took me a bit, just a bit,
And definitely in a like earlier version, I definitely spent too much time going into like why Selexar calling itself it instead of he, him, her, hers, and they and like they, them, is to sort of separate them from the host of what human is, even though Selexar does believe that it is human because it's not animal nor machine. But of course, I feel that that's one of the ideas within this, that if I were to go back and work on this some more, that would definitely be gone into a lot more, because it will play a larger part in how Selexar sort of defines their self. But so I remember you said before I started reading that you would call this story overcooked instead of half baked. So I kind of want to like get to the bottom of that and like why you would think that. Because, I can probably agree. I just, what are you thinking?
No, yeah, for just fully understanding what I mean by that. So I think what I mean by that is that I felt there was more words and description and style than
substance,
an understanding of what is like, of what exactly is going on. So it's like there was more. When I said overcooked, I was like picturing like a brownie that is like a little bit burned on the outside. That's what I was picturing, of just like there being so much of this style and description and things that it ends up confusing a little bit more than it does like carrying out the purpose. I don't know if that's necessarily the best description. That's like, and I don't even know if I would actually blame like the style for why it's confusing. But I just did notice that I was a little confused on what happened, and
and I mean, honestly, I would say that I agree. I mean, going into this, definitely within the first version, going into the second, I did want to keep that sort of voice, but at the same time, I was trying to keep to some sort of time limit when I was writing this, so it was really a conflict of, do I focus more on these smaller movements, on these sort of smaller moments, or do I just get to the end and then backtrack? So I decided to basically write this through, so I know where it is going and why it is going there, and I kind of left filling in those sort of gaps to the end, which of course never really happened. So yeah.
So just for clarification, can you, when the stuff like disappears and stuff, I kind of got the understanding of, it's like for the most part I did know like what was happening and like how it like looked, right? So I had like the very distant view, like a vague understanding and a very specific understanding, but I missed the middle ground of like why and how these things were happening, like the pantry and things disappearing, which I was like, Slexar is probably responsible for this, and this is like a gaslighting thing, right? But I didn't know like how these things were getting disappeared or what the purpose was. And the same thing with like why H is inside of this thing, and like how long has he been down here and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, those are like really good questions. And I mean, hey, these are questions that I had the first time that I was writing it. But then, now I do have a reason and a sort of answer for this. But where this story ends, it is ending with all of these questions and no answers. So yeah, and I mean, like, I'm glad that you picked up on the pantry is missing because of Lexar, and that Lexar has something to do with the strange ways that H is, basically acting, him missing days and just being very sort of emotionally drained as soon as the sort of as soon as the pipeline starts to work. And definitely going into a second version, these are things that I would work on. But I think the biggest issue that I did have when I was writing this through is just trying to get from point A to point B while covering everything that I wanted to, cover, right? And, of course, I think, some of the, actually a lot of the dialogue doesn't really amount to anything besides setting up Lexar and maybe...
But the thing is that, like, I really, really, really like the dialogue.
But it
so that's the part
purpose, where... it's not pushing the story forward, So I think really I have to, like, because I would love to keep this dialogue. I would love to even add more. But I think the thing that is missing from this story, besides the quote unquote shock of Lexar getting rid of the air within the cube to force H to go to sleep, beyond that, I feel that this is definitely missing purpose, and it's missing that sort of grasping boundary to where what H is supposed to be doing, what Lexar is supposed to be doing. But these are things that I couldn't find the time to really put into this short story. But of course, that's the point of do the right thing, right? Do what you can within your time limit. And I think that one of my biggest issues that I found with this and with other do the right things is that even though there is this time limit, I haven't been able to figure out how to write like there is a time limit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think a little bit. So you're saying that you write still like as if there wasn't one?
Yeah, I write how I normally would, which is slow. And then, about halfway through the first fucking paragraph, I would look down and say, "Oh, it's been 20 minutes." So then I would just sort of rush, and I would skip to the end so I know where I'm going, and just basically do patchwork for the rest of it. I think a better way of going at it is to not look at this project as a larger piece and to focus on the small and the moments, Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you came at it with a completely different style, like I prefer this version of your style, but just like for practice, right? Of like having a lot of extremely simple and short sentences. Yeah. Rather than like much description, like saying like he woke up, it was hot, right? It had been a while since it was this hot, like that being the most complex kind of sentence you have in it, and just going forward through an entire story like that with these very simple lines, short, and keeping any sort of plot sort of the same way, where it's like just getting from point A to point B, or sort of just getting to a single realization or anything. Honestly, like that.
Yeah, I think
it might be worth practicing.
And I think I really might try that, because I mean that is a style that's sort of foreign to me. I mean, granted, all throughout high school, I was reading Cormac McCarthy, and he loves his paragraphs.
Yeah, he's the king of that. Yeah.
So,
although, did you know? So, is it Cormac McCarthy that has the really like simple sort of stuff?
No,
just like Hemingway.
He's the one that doesn't use periods.
Who am I thinking of?
For the most part.
Oh,
but yeah, no, that's a really good idea. I've never been a less is more kind of guy, so. So I want to ask, because I would like to sort of revisit this, coupled with, hey, it's always better to get better as a writer. So within this story, what parts or sort of aspects of it do you think was lacking the most? Like, what was really dragging this story?
Honestly, I think it is just the clarity. Because I really like the prose, and I really like the dialogue, and I like the subject matter, and it was just the middling factor of not fully understanding the purpose and the hows of things.
I see.
Of like, why? What is the situation? Why is he stuck down here? What does he do normally?
So I guess my choice to leave a lot of things ambiguous backfired in that sense, because it's too ambiguous. and that's something I think that happens all the time. I remember also in that course, in the creative editing course, is that whenever someone would bring in a story where like confusion is the point, it would almost always just be more bothersome than. I think it's just a really, really difficult thing to do, to like intentionally confuse the audience, but also make it so it's not annoying.
so it doesn't feel like it's done wrong.
Yeah, and I mean that just seems like such a difficult balance, because I mean I guess that was what I was going for here, in a sense. I didn't want to give too many answers because I want to throw the audience in this box that is very, very far down within the Earth's mantle, with this giant server farm that can speak to you. I wanted to keep the strangeness of this setting, and then sort of branch off from there. But quickly I kind of realized, well, you can only keep it so, I guess, like, present without adding the background, because if not, you're just going to be lost in what is happening. So,
and I think eventually you do have to give them the answer and things like that. I think it's like, I have no idea if this is an actual, how well this would apply to things, but what comes to my mind is like, the character maybe should be more confused than the reader
about why they're there.
Well, like, if there is going to be confusion, that it should be less than a character's confusion. Like we should understand more than what they understand.
Okay. So, maybe, basically,
I don't know.
The audience should maybe always know more than the main character. Well, I guess if the purpose
maybe that probably doesn't apply as much.
If the purpose is confusion, the audience should only be as confused as the main character, as a rule of thumb.
Or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but that's what comes to mind. Maybe that would make the story or another
sounds right.
turn out better.
Yeah,
it's worth a try.
That sounds like a thing. Well, all right. I guess I have one more question before we sort of close this out. So, in all of this slightly overdone shitstorm of a story,
I wouldn't call it a shitstorm of a story. I still liked it.
Well, I have to be harsh on myself, because if I'm not, who will, right?
Okay, sure.
But in this story, that some might like it, some don't. I know I don't. But in this story, what would you say is something that needs to stay in further edits? Like, what part of it were you fully invested in, or like really enjoyed?
I like Slexar's personality and his voice, and sort of the implication of him like changing his voice over time. I very much like that. The sort of like experimental nature of his personality, of always trying on new things. Yeah, that I very much like that part.
Well, all right, that's enough about me and my small little trips about robots who can think better than humans and handlers without names. I think it's prime time to move on into our listener-submitted story section, don't you think?
That's right.
All right. So, we will be doing things a little bit different. We will be combining stories from our previous week and this week into one big block of beautiful stories. All right, so we will be talking about stories by Ace of Sword, Sarah Penguin, Matt Said Words, Ace of Sword again for the second week, Captain Rhino for the second week, Flower Priest, Matt Said Words for the second week, and Sarah Penguin for that same week.
Sure. All right, let's get into them.
Sure. So we will be starting on last week's with Ace of Sword with wet.
Which is it's just a great word. I just like hearing that word by itself.
Wet?
Just wet.
Wet?
Yeah, wet.
Yeah. It's slightly better than Dan.
And that other word that the cultural discourse was influenced by iCarly and decided that moist is a terrible word.
I don't know why people believe that.
It came from iCarly. There was an episode where they hated the word moist, and then everyone was like, the word moist is terrible, and it went everywhere. That's just how, and then we pretended that it was like a truth, even though it just came from TV. That's just what we do.
That's horrible, because it's a really good word.
It's a good word. I love moist bread. Some good moist bread. Some moist cake. It's fantastic. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Oh no, my carpet is moist.
My socks are moist.
Where's that damn dog? Yeah, I'm moist.
Okay, let's get going. Here we have a professor coming into this room where it is pouring. There's an inch of water on the ground, trickles going down the walls and dripping from the ceiling. So just completely flooded. Very much feels like ruins. And this professor is being led in by an officer and an inspector. And we see how both the officer and the inspector have different augmentations. The inspector with these inhuman eyes, I very much liked. And this room is just covered in corpses and gore. And the professor's put off by this before it's revealed that it's a hologram. Some more tech and stuff. And the implication is that a crime has been done here. And as they look at it, the professor realizes that this room is actually in the same style as a temple, something that he studies, except it's done with the graffiti and junk metal and things like that, rather than, like an ancient stone temple, which is a very intriguing idea. And there's also some more world building about how sort of implying that no one really goes to the surface. The surface is where there's like scavengers and things, and with this pouring rain, and normally he's underground with everyone else. But inside the mouth of this relief of a screaming face is a head of a person, which is shocking. But then it reveals that the skull of this head has two robotic eyes in it, and they said that they've got a witness now to whatever crime was here, which is a really interesting way of setting that up.
Yeah, definitely. So I think this story is really ripe with this sort of world building. I mean, I really like the very first paragraph where we not only go into that this world has sort of cybernetics, but we're also going into how some of them cost less than dirt, and how the cost of dirt has risen. So yeah, I just think it starts off really great as sort of setting the stage for this world. And then, as we progress further, we are getting some like really great moments of dialogue from this professor. And again, going deeper into this world building, I love how this room of corpses is being described on this sort of hologram. And I think that this story is just a really great setup for something that I can definitely see going further. So yeah, a fantastic job, and I loved it throughout. Really great job.
Yeah, I love this sort of cyberpunk, rain and temples and things. It's really cool.
All right, up next is by Matt Said Words with The Waltz of Miss Dawn.
So this is a sequel on another story they wrote a bit ago, The Nocturne of Miss Loi, and that's where this what's the chauffeur brings this fancy lady to a bar where she dances all sexily and then kills someone, and that's very shocking. And so this is now the court case for that, because she killed herself afterwards. And so the prosecution, which was a friend of Miss Lua, has accused the bartender of sipping her Rohypnol and causing her to kill someone in a murderous rage. And it feels a little flimsy, even as she describes and pour some emotion into it, because it's like, how did the Rohypnol get her to actually murder someone? And that sort of is in our heads as we go. But it does really seem that the bartender probably did this. She sets up a good case, and then the defendant comes up and does some stuff to try to throw it out, and accuses Miss Wa of being an alcoholic and being drunk, and that being why she turned murderous. And it's kind of like neither of these things being outlined really feel like the correct answer, even though they're being argued really well. And the whole time, the chauffeur from the original part is here and sort of reacting to all of this. And we can really feel some of the emotion in some of this. But finally, the court case ends, and Dick leaves the court, where he gets a call from Jane, his ex-wife, who was we kind of feature prominently in the last story as someone he remembers. And she sort of implies that she was the one that slipped something in to the drinks, and she had intended for it to go into his drink, because her drink looked like his, and it was a mistake that Miss Law was the one that was that got the effects.
Yeah. So I really dug this story. It was a bit twisty. It was a bit turny. But I just really enjoy this dialogue. I mean, it feels like a court case, with the sort of diction that is being used, and these points. And you do a really great job at setting up this scene and really telling us why these things do matter. And yeah, I would agree that I can really feel the emotion. I can feel being here. So yeah, I just think that this is a really successful scene that links pretty well into the previous story, without it having to do anything with that same character, really. So really, really great job.
Yeah, I think it was really well done, those arguments, and I could really feel what Dick was feeling as he reacts to things.
Well, all right. Our last story for our first week is by Sarah Penguin with Multicolor Masquerade Mystery.
So here we sort of set up this sort of secret society kind of dinner with all these fancy rich people.
Illuminati.
Yeah, kind of, or at least like a local Illuminati, where there's a bunch of rich people dressed in masquerade masks, and only referring to each other as the color as Lord or Lady, and the color of their outfit, basically Lady Green, Lady Black, that sort of thing. But what has happened here is that there's actually been a murder just the other day. I think it's a little unclear on when the murder happened. That's something that I did want to know. But the murder has happened, and Lady Green, or it seems like it's Lady Green, is worrying and trying to figure that out. But she goes and goes to the bathroom where there is a servant there who she has had some affairs with before, and she sort of flirts with the servant and makes her fluster. And Lady Red and Lady Green sort of discuss who it might have been that murdered Lady Silver. We set up a red herring and Lord Purple, who's trying to be the new Silver, the leader. Before finally we go back to the parlor room, basically, where we sort of try to figure out who it was until finally we get our twist, which felt very satisfying to me, where Lady Green, our main character, takes off her mask and turns out she is actually Lady Silver, and the person that got murdered in her place was Lady Green. And there's a sort of a fight about it. And Lady Red basically admits that she was the one trying to kill Lady Silver, but everyone's upset now because she actually meant to kill Lady Green. And then finally, the actual Lady Silver leaves the room to be with Julie, that one servant that she's been having those affairs with, which is also the daughter of the one that tried to kill her. So a really complicated situation.
Definitely. But yeah, I think the story is really well controlled. I mean, it really has to be when it comes to setting up this mystery. I love how it starts off with these questions like, "Oh, someone's dead," and they're trying to really figure this out. But we are also getting this really great description of this sort of like a masquerade party, and the type of people that really go to it. And then later on, as we learn more and more, there's just twists on top of twists on top of twists, which, in other situations, this main twist can be seen as messy, but within this story, it makes perfect sense and it feels very natural to a certain extent. So yeah, I just think that this story has really great control over the prose, over the dialogue, and has delivered a really solid story. So great job.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Well, all right, time to move on to our current week of stories, starting off with Ace of Sword with Stolen Moment.
So here we have Sarah Depine, or Depine, the very fancy French name. She's at a masquerade, so we have a lot of we have a lot of things echoing, but even between both weeks, I think maybe there was a lot of echoes between mysteries and loneliness. But so she's at this fancy party, and she's just so tired of it, tired of standing, tired of smiling. She sees her fiance, who doesn't seem tired at all, but it feels like he should be. But so she puts up a fan to hide her face, finally just taking a moment to relax, and then whispers a formula or a spell that pauses time on the entire area. And it takes, the implications of that it would take a lot out of her, but she goes to her bodyguard, who we can tell that there's a lot of feeling and history there. Someone that was raised on the streets and then given an education, Mary. And Sarah takes her out of the time lock, and they're sort of together. And Mary can't relax, and Sarah can't rest either. But together in this moment of stop time, they go and find a couch, and they cuddle a little bit to finally rest a little bit and provide something for each other. And it's really, really sweet.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a very sweet and romantic story. And I do like the take on loneliness this story took. I mean, in the beginning, it is made very plain that within the moment that we start, Sarah is not very happy. In that it seems like they are really looking for something else. And I do like the addition of this sort of slight magic to where it doesn't seem that this world is like run on magic to a certain extent, but it is something that's within the sort of sphere. And I like how this magic is being used to get this very sweet moment. And I love the dynamic that Sarah and Mary do share. So I mean, overall, this is a really well written story that makes my heart feel good.
Yeah,
it's a great.
I thought it was really, really sweet.
All right, up next is by Captain Rhino with "Alone in a Dried Up Lake."
So a bit of a dramatic title there. And so we start off here, and it really we start off with "I am born in a laboratory." And as we go, it really feels like we are describing the birth and testing and construction of some biological monster, right? Some secret project that these scientists create that is going to be unleashed on the world, a cursed being, like Frankenstein. Is kind of what it feels like, or something maybe more mechanical than Frankenstein, but something like that, with parts added and tested and removed and things like that. And it feels very like nefarious. We have this statement here of the scientists say that, they're covered in protective clothing, and they say that the scientists are the contaminants, and that the clothes are for the protection of the subject rather than the protection of the scientists. They say they care, but I can't help feeling that they are afraid of me, is what it says. And then it turns out that they're not trying to protect the subject from them, but where the subject is going from them, from their contaminants. And so it's a really intriguing setup that we have for all this, until finally the creature, whatever it is put into a rocket. It's given a small companion, sent off to this barren wasteland with nothing but sand and rocks and sky, and it's alone. And they want to know what it sees. And then we cut back to Earth, where someone is looking up at Mars, and talking about how Perseverance is up there, the little rover, going to explore, trying to find out if there's life on Mars and things like that. And the little girl that is talking there, it says, "Good luck, Percy," and it's rooting Perseverance on from all the way from Earth. And this is really sweet, idea to contrast with the confusion and loneliness that this rover is feeling on the red planet. And I thought it was a really fun and interesting twist on that idea. This is, of course, the tragic idea that our rovers are confused and alone. But also that we are, rooting for them and that we really like them. We actually personify them a lot, so it's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, I really liked the prose within this story. I mean, we were just talking about simpler prose and how they can be very effective. And I see within this that these prose are broken up. Some of the lines are just one sentence long. But either way, it is still very effective in getting at getting across these complex emotions that this rover is a feeling. Do like the twist of it being a rover, because at first, yeah, I was thinking it was some sort of scientific robotic experiment. But then, reading further, you quickly realize, oh, this is a rover, and this rover has some sort of sentience. So yeah, it just sort of adds this like another layer to it. So yeah, I just really like the personification being done here when it comes to this rover, but at the same time, it really does feel that this rover has this sort of sentience, and it's really saddening that this rover is so alone, even though we put so much hope and faith that it will find something. So yeah, I just think this is a really strong and tight story whose prose really does carry it throughout. So really great job. Mm-hmm. All right, up next is with Matt Said Words with 3 stories.
So this story actually did get me a bit emotional. And this is sort of like where the idea of loneliness can really be used to a deep effect. So we open here.
All sides.
Yeah, absolutely. So part 1 with isolation. And we have Teresa in this really small apartment, and she feels very alone. And we understand how this is a room in a nursing home, and how she's been very alone for a long time in this nursing home. And her daughter, Victoria, said that it would be good for her, and Victoria, is off really busy, but she feels more alone than ever. And that it's really actually like a really bad time. And so she picks up an iPad, and which she doesn't really like anyway, but she really misses those calls. And it's her birthday, and she hasn't gotten a call. It's like she's been forgotten, and that makes her very, very sad. And it's the first, she looks in the reflection and says, "Happy birthday, old friend." And they were the first words she had spoken in 8 days, which is just tragic. So then we have part 2, and Victoria, the daughter, is in a fancy car, but she's in the city. She's like fighting traffic. She's just trying to get home to her daughter. And she's been in that traffic for so long. And then she gets a call from her work calling her back to work, and she's got to scramble for a solution, call a second babysitter, because the babysitter wasn't going to be paid to be there that long. And just she's incredibly frustrated by this. And finally she calls, and she talks to her daughter and says, I'll have to leave you alone for a bit. Is that okay for tonight? And her daughter doesn't complain or anything, and just says, "You'll be when will you be back?" And she says, "I'll be back in the morning." And Victoria sort of like breaks down for a moment. She screams, and she misses her mother. She misses her hometown and friends. She misses her daughter. She just hates that she can't be with them, right? And it's like neither of them know how much she's struggling and how much she wants to be with them. And she just, even though the reason that she can't be with them is on her end. And then finally we have part 3, part 2 being named Loneliness, part 3 being named Solitude. And we have that daughter, the daughter of Victoria, Hannah. And Hannah's alone, and the babysitter just leaving. She's okay with being alone, but she did want help, putting her science project together, which is what they were supposed to do. And so she's a little disappointed, but she's not, broken up over it. And she feels that she's okay with the loneliness, but she also, reminisces of how she kind of misses her grandmother, who showed her some music that she really liked. And then we have a wonderful resolution here with she goes to she uses her phone or an iPad, I'm not sure which one, and sees that it's her grandma's birthday, and she'd forgotten, and probably her mom had forgotten, and she feels bad about that, and she calls grandma, and it looks like grandma was crying, but everything's okay now. And they have like a wonderful little talk, and they say that they miss each other, and it's a nice way to finish off that loop.
Yeah, so I love the concept of this story. I mean, showing these different aspects of loneliness across these different generations it's just really strong. And I like how it is very different for each one of these people. How and it's coming from different places. the grandmother is sort of reminiscing on how things used to be, on how the mother is trapped between what she needs to do and what she wants to do, and how seeing her a mother and being with her daughter takes second place to her job, but because of that she is being isolated. And I really do like the ending, and it really did hit me, because I mean, I was always left alone as a kid, and I did really, miss your mother, and you call up random people just trying to talk. But I think it was a really nice and sweet ending of the granddaughter calling her grandmother, and how, even though they're all lonely in a different aspect, just that granddaughter reaching out seems to have made the grandmother's day. So I think that, yeah, this is a really strong story. And I think, honestly, if you were to go back and revamp this story, it would be a great use of time, because there is a lot that I can see being said here. So I mean, overall, it's a fantastic job, and I really, really loved it.
Yeah, I really like how, as you said, they are portraying, different effects and perspectives and positions in loneliness. Like, the grandma is like, not only is she very alone, but she's also kind of like given up on continuing to reach out. She's probably gotten too many rejections from her daughter being too busy. And then also she doesn't want to reach out with people at the nursing home because they keep dying. So she doesn't want to get attached. And so she's kind of given up on reaching out. And then Victoria, the mother, can't. She just can't. She struggles with that. She really wishes that she could. She can't. And then the daughter is kind of like, she doesn't realize how much she needs to be with people, but she does actually take the initiative in reaching out, and that's kind of like, maybe that's a more optimal position to be in, of like, even if you feel like you don't need it, knowing that that's what other people need, and taking that effort is really important.
Definitely. So, fantastic story. Matt said words. And up next is By Flower Priest with co-stars.
I really like the story too. So, and I actually, skipping ahead a bit, this has sort of a sadder ending, and I think I really like that sadder ending, actually. So Trevor has just gotten out of the shower, and there's some like bruises on him, but he hopes he'll vanish in time for tomorrow's shoot. But he finally comes out, and Connor, his co-star, is on the couch texting, laying down kind of relaxed. And they talk a little bit, and there's a little bit of very, very light like teasing and flirting, but it's very, very light. Everyone else is gone. The director has called for lunch, and so everyone else has gone to go eat. And Trevor says that they probably should go out too. And they sort of, reminisce a bit, and they talk a little bit about how it was a good scene. And we get the implication that what they do is they do porn. And that's where the light teasing comes from. But, Connor has a boyfriend, so they're not, they're just co-stars, right? And they don't have even a deep friendship. It's just basically coworkers. And even then they don't work together that often. More like friendship, maybe. And, they talk a little bit about, what their families, think of about this and things like that. Connor is texting his mother right then, and Trevor can't really. But Trevor starts to leave when Connor says that it's okay if you want to hang out until the crew gets back. And there's a little bit of awkwardness, but not that much. And they are friendly with each other. And Trevor's tempted. He's really tempted to know someone, but there's some jealousy of I think jealousy of wanting to be with someone like Connor, but who has a boyfriend, and being close to it is more painful than anything physical. And then he says, no, it's fine. I really need to go. I'm shooting again tomorrow. Got to get ready. And so kind of pushes away that opportunity to get closer to someone because it also is painful to get closer to someone. And that's sort of like a tragic, flaw of someone to reject the hands that people reach out to you.
So yeah, this story was fantastic, and I think honestly it's because of the dialogue and just these sort of moments that we are in. I mean, you can feel the wants of the main character, but also the reasoning behind why they don't take this sort of hand that is reaching out to them. And yeah, I just think it's a really great moment that is keying us into every other moment that happens outside of this apartment. There's really great scope in everything that they are saying. And I mean, overall, I just really, really enjoy how this loneliness is being portrayed, especially within this sort of industry, So yeah, overall, I just think it is really, really strong, and I think this is definitely something that you should come back and work on more, because I think it can definitely go somewhere. So great job.
Yeah, I actually really like that the way that the pointedry, or at least how these actors are in it, is sort of shown of just like it's just another sort of job for them, and there's some differences of like you get very close to someone, and there's some complications with that, but for the most part it's pretty normal. And yeah, I just very much like that of like not overdrawing attention to it, but not hiding it either of what is what the story's about.
Yeah, definitely. Well, all right. Our last story for this week is by Sarah Penguin with Man-Eating Dragon.
So this is there's a really interesting opening here with this girl is swinging a sword, and we have some voices sort of talking to her as she's swinging the sword. It says like, haha, you missed, gotta try harder than that. And she's like running around, and but we sort of slowly realize that she's not actually like play fighting with anyone, it's just herself, which to me was when she ran out into the hall. She swings her sword, she hits a pillar, but it's on purpose. It's just to spin her around because she's just running around. And these voices are talking to her. We don't know who these people are, who's talking to her. Are they like little fairies or something, or companions or what? We're sort of grasping at what these things could be, and we realize that she's inside this completely abandoned castle with like skeletons, and everything's rotting and dirty, and she's probably like naked right now, and just like she's kind of a feral child sort of. And she hears something, and it turns out there is a knight approaching, and he's approaching the castle. She has to go get ready. She doesn't want to put on any like fancy dresses because they are restrictive, and she hates that. So she puts on like a loose dress because she can't actually be naked. And we sort of realize that the voices are just in her head, and we're still wondering of like what does that mean? What kind of voices are these? And the knight comes in, and he's sort of talking to her, and she's thinking about the rules, which is that a knight has to be handsome and worthy. And she kind of doesn't really know what either of those things mean. And the knight is like mostly like an okay guy, but he's just very confused as to why there is no dragon here to kill. And the princess is like barefoot and really dirty and talking kind of weird because she hasn't heard people speak. She's only read them in books for the most part. Yeah, so she takes him to the bedroom where she has the book with that talks about what, there's supposed to be a knight that slays a dragon and stuff. There's some funny like back and forth about how there's a lot of setup about how she doesn't speak correctly. She speaks more like how you would read something. She misinterprets people speaking. And her last name is Dragon, apparently. And so she's like a princess dragon, but she's not an actual dragon either. But anyway, he's like, I need to take you away from here and marry you so that I can be king, and don't worry, it'll be really good. And he like describes a bunch of things that princesses do, but it's not really something that she wants. And so she decides, nope, he's not worthy. And as they sort of are walking out down the steps, he's like, how did all those knights die? And she's like, oh, they missed step, misstep, and then dead. And he's like, it must be a trap of some sort of spring-loaded thing. And that's when she pushes him, and he misses a step on the stairs, and he falls, and he breaks his spine. Just like all the other knights, they missed a step. And that's sort of like a payoff on how she wasn't saying words right. And so we think it's going to be that in this, but no, she means it very literally. Then she decides to eat him, as she has everyone else that comes here. She's never had someone to talk while she to talk to her while she eats, and even though the knight couldn't feel his arms, he still screamed as she bit into it. So fun story.
Yeah, very fun. I mean, I think the great setup here that's really taking its time allows the twist at the end to really pay off in a really great way. And yeah, I just really, really liked how we start in this place of confusion, in a sense, with these sort of disembodied voices coming in and out, and just like trying to figure out exactly what is happening. But as the story progresses, we get more and more scope. And the beginning is definitely teaching us in some way that maybe we shouldn't trust this like main character. But beyond that, we don't really get any reason not to. So yeah, it just all builds up to this really great payoff at the very end. And I know as soon as the knight came in asking these questions, I knew it was building towards something. But I think the reveal of this main character being the dragon, or the person that killed all of these knights, was really well done and handled very well. So great job all around.
Yeah. I think there's the position of the knight, I think, is like very slightly confusing to me, of like, him being bad or good, or like how much in between he is, like what exactly, like he seems to sort of understand that this is a weird situation, but also doesn't fully accept that like she's not gonna just be a princess. Like it seems like he seems to understand that she's like she hasn't grown up as a princess, but still feels like he's just going to treat her like a normal princess, not like a confused, feral princess, and not like a princess to be rescued, but like in this weird sort of middle ground. And so I think like, putting him and clarifying his motivations a bit, of like either going, oh, he's actually a good guy, of like, I'm going to rescue you, and then you're going to be like a good princess, and I'll clean you up and take you out of this horrible place and stuff, which I think is what he's leaning toward, or the other direction of like, you are definitely not a princess, but I'm still going to take you out of here, and then when I marry you, I'll be king, and that's all that really matters to me. And sort of just like, yeah, solidifying that whole, I think I really, really would have loved that. And but I still really like it in this sense, and that's just like a little tweak. And I very much like the several twists, both of the wordplay twist, and that she is the man-eating dragon. Yeah, it's really enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. Well, all right, those are all of our stories for this week, but we do want to give a big old do the right thing thank you to everyone who did submit a story. So thank you very much to Matt Said Words.
Thank you to Sarah Penguin.
Thank you, Ace of Sword.
Thank you, Captain Rhino.
And thank you, Flower Priest. And we also want to say thank you to everyone who did leave 2 or more comments. Leaving comments not only helps you understand how you feel about your own story, but you're providing someone else with crucial feedback that can only make them and you a better writer. So, thank you very much to Matt Said Words, Captain Rhino, Words on the Wind, Sarah Penguin, and Flower Priest. Thank you so much for leaving comments.
Yeah, y'all are fantastic. I always love seeing the discussion under the stories and things like that. It's always also good, like, you read a story and then you see someone else talking about it and you're like, did I feel the same way as they did? Or, maybe they understood it better than you did, or vice versa. And that's really satisfying to hear. So, yeah, thanks for everyone who leaves comments.
Definitely. If you want to be like all of these wonderful writers and submit your story to Do the Right Thing, You can do that by going on Reddit. By going to /r/ do the right thing. All you have to do is sit down for 30 minutes and write a complete short story using 3 of 4 randomly generated words.
That's right. And to see the words as soon as they come out, the best way to do that is follow us on Twitter, which is @RightThinkCast. You can also send us an email with your story or anything else you want to tell us, which is rightThinkCast@gmail.com. We do plenty of wonderful things here at Doof Media Productions. Is production? I don't think Productions is part of our name, but I don't really care. Doof Media Productions, where we're covering a lot of stuff. The Doofcast is finishing up their Dissecting Director series on Guillermo del Toro. They recently covered Pacific Rim, so there was a really great discussion of like what works and what doesn't in Pacific Rim, and I really enjoyed that discussion by Scott and Matt. And I'm looking forward to the next movies that they cover of Guillermo del Toro's. It was really interesting seeing the whole growth of it the whole way through. And of course, there's always so many other things going on. We know we have the Game Club, which is currently covering Hades. We have our book club, which I don't remember what the book is this week, but I'm sure it's very, very good, and so much else.
Definitely. Well, all right. I think it's high time to roll on into next week's words, don't you think?
Sure.
Cool. So next week's topic is disaster. So we want you to write a great old story about any sort of disaster. You can take it literally and have buildings falling and snow covering mountains and cities, or you can go a little bit more non-literal. Maybe a relationship ends in disaster, or maybe there is a huge car crash, 100-car pileup,
which happened.
Something like that.
Also,
which did happen.
Yeah.
In Texas.
So yeah, this is in theme with what happened. We're not just doing this in a super like people died and stuff. So like this prompt is like not only. It's like you can take it any way you want, and you could write a comedic disaster as well if you want. But just like natural disasters, especially, they do evoke a lot of different feelings in a lot of different ways. There is like the awe-inspiring and sort of terrifying, overwhelming nature of natural disasters, right? Of just like kind of you're sort of helpless in it, and there's nothing much you can do except wait it out. There's sort of like the feeling of having to survive through these things. And then there's also maybe more hopeful feelings of like the moments that we find in them where we help each other or we comfort each other or we're just like in each other's presence and things like that. Like I remember during big blackout and I'm like getting drunk in front of a fireplace because like what else am I going to do? Where I was like, this would be so nice to be with someone. And so I very much felt the theme of loneliness then. It was like, this is such like an opportunity, of like to be in front of a fire, cozied up with blankets and things like that and a little bit drunk. Like that would have been so lovely, but of course no one was able to reach me because the roads were frozen over. So
yeah, and covered in ice.
Yeah, so anyway, I think there's a lot you can do with writing about a disaster any sort, but I'm thinking of natural disasters and the many ways that you can sort of take that prompt.
Definitely. And to help you write this, the words for next week are lock, warn, peace, and student.
So lock as in to lock or unlock something. So it can be a tool used to make sure that you cannot open something, or something can be locked in place, which is it's set securely so it cannot move. Or you lock in your answer, basically a state of non-changing.
Also, it is a very popular last name.
That's true. Although I think that's with an added E, but I think that would be allowed. Warn, which is to give someone a warning, which is to, God, I'm really struggling not just using the word in itself.
Warn.
That it tells someone to be wary of something negative that may happen. Peace, which is like the opposite of wartime when there is no conflict. I think that's
a time of pleasure, possibly,
and contentment, and no, yeah, I think especially no conflict. I think is the Yep. And student, which is someone who studies to learn more. And there's many different ways that can be. Usually it's under the tutelage of an institution or a person.
Nice. So what story are you going to write next week?
So I'm going to write a story about how there once was a student writing about the horrible things that were contained below the earth. And he read some stuff. And it was a wonderful time of peace, where these horrible things were locked down there. But someone gave him a warning never to go down and even look at the door, because then it would be let out and ruin everything. And then he did that, and it sucked. It was so bad. And like all the bad stuff came. It's like Pandora's box. His name was Pandora, and he opened the box because it was locked, but he opened it, and the bad stuff came out. It was really bad. The end. Don't open things. Don't do it.
All right, nice. You know what? And that's a really good message. I think my story next week is going to follow a very similar path. But instead of the lock being on Pandora's box, the lock is on the teacher's lounge. You see, at the end of every student's senior year, the best thing they can possibly do is pull a good old-fashioned senior prank. And in this small little town of Wichita Falls, in the great grand high school of Wichita State University, the senior council has decided to cover the entire teacher's lounge in tinfoil and coffee grounds.
Okay.
Now, of course, months before this happens, the principal warns the student body, hey, if you pull any sort of prank in your senior year, we will withhold your diploma, because that actually does something to high school students.
Okay.
But none of them listened to them, and they covered the entire lounge in tinfoil and coffee grounds, and someone even peed in there just because they could. Which thus instilled a horrible time within this school, where rights were taken away. Teachers were at war with their students, and honestly, there's no hope for peace anymore in this small town.
Because no one will do the right thing. That's all, folks. Have a good. Don't freeze to death. I think it's over though. But
it is over. It's 75 degrees now.
Oh, great! I love that. I love how it's summer already. It's just
yeah.